played for 6 years properly. So like I feel like after the first 2 songs, I feel like I can't feel my hand properly. My wife said to me that her hand, she felt like she had a rubber hand, somebody else's hand trying to play bass. So we got all these problems, but we just find them, you know, it's amusing, or it's what it is, and it gives it that. I always like things sounding like you've just started. I always like things like you've just started. If you imagine, like, I used to be a big drinker, and the interesting thing for me about drinking was the first glass of beer, and then for the rest of the night you're chasing the taste of the first glass, because the first glass is so nice, and you can never have the first glass again, apparently. So if you limit everything, and you can always be doing the first glass, because you don't go for the first glass the same evening, you don't indulge yourself. So when we played yesterday, you know, we could be just starting as a group.
If I could just explain the way my mind is.
We get asked to play quite often. We haven't played for the last 6 years live, and Week-End Festival got in touch through my gallery and asked if we would play, and I said no, and then they said we could give you double the amount of money, and I said no. We don't play you're not really play anymore. And they said, well, what do you need? I said, well, you wouldn't be able to get us the equipment we want. We'll get you. And they said, yes, we will. I said, we use different equipment than other people. And they said, that's not a problem. And I said, well, we'd have to take my daughter with us because we're not leaving her at home. So, and then we need someone to look after her. I said, that's not a problem. They said, well, we don't really want to stay in a hotel. And they said, that's not a problem. So in the end, they wore us down. There wasn't anything left to say no to, so we were forced to play. That meant that we had to remember how the songs go and do rehearsals, which I don't like doing either. And in England there was there's a comedian called Stuart Lee, and they're doing an All Tomorrow's Parties, and Stuart Lee asked if we'd play at that. And we thought that was in November, so he said, "Oh yeah, well, if we did 2, it might make sense." But now it turns out that All Tomorrow's Party is in April. That means we're going to have to learn the songs again in the spring. The reason I play music, or the places I like to play music, don't really exist anymore, and that's the downside of doing festivals as well, because I like small clubs, but small clubs don't. Most people now play to promote themselves, and the clubs don't want to pay, and then they have a large PA system with offstage mixing and much too big for the club, and we don't use that type of equipment. And then I don't like fold back or offstage mixing, and I don't like the security. I like back rooms of bars and the places we used to play when we were kids. The venue last night's fine for us.
Okay.
That's ideal large venue. We don't like going much bigger than that, because we have to put some mics over our PA system to be able to hopefully get some sound going into the room. When the White Stripes came on the scene, people said to me that the White Stripes were similar to us and doing the same thing, and I said, absolutely not. The White Stripes want to get into the stadium as fast as possible, and they want the gap between them and the audience, and they want the 15 yards or 20 yards, and we're always trying to close the gap. Right. We've never tried to be anything. And that to us is, when I say we don't want to be a famous group, I should say that that's very low on our priority. We don't ever change what we do for what they want, because we don't like giving any power away to the promoters or the world of the industry world of music. And it means that it makes it much smaller and a lot less commercial. But it's not because we're necessarily anti-commercial, it's because we want the thing to be what we do. We don't have any interest in doing what someone else wants. So I think that's the reason that people have liked us in the past, like Kurt Cobain and Jack White used to like us, and these famous people, and Beck, and these people come to us and say they like what we do. But I think it's because they know that we don't do what they do. I think sometimes the music gets a bit hectic because we don't know what's happening, and there's a certain amount of spontaneity and lack of control and knowledge on our part. Yeah. But the approach isn't hectic at all. Mm-hmm. You know, it's very intelligent and considered, because we know exactly what our parameters are. We're not when we you see, when I say they offer, like, we get asked to play a lot and people offer us more money and I say no, or people ask us to go to Japan and play and they will give us bad conditions or conditions we don't want, and I say to people, no, we're not going. And they say to me, well, other groups will do it for a lot less. And I say, well, it's best to have them play. And we even used to do this we've always had this attitude. In the Headcoats we had the same thing go on. And I say, well, have the other group play. And people say to me, oh, that's a dangerous game to play with them, because then they might not want you. And I said, yeah, but I'm not pretending. I don't mind staying at home. I'm completely happy not doing it. We don't try to be new or different or relevant. What we do is we do what we do, and we try to do it properly in the parameter of what that is. So, like, as a painter, I'm not trying to evolve new ways of making art, because I think that would be immature or adolescent and stupid. And I think that lots of ways things are taken forward in creativity of people look for originality, and by looking for originality they often are just creating something faddish, something with a novelty aspect, because it's not original, it's just a novelty. Because the most important thing is not to be seen as new and original, but to be seen as real and authentic. And people lose sight of these things, like with the Rolling Stones and the British groups in the early 60s. I mean, the Stones were sort of concerned about writing songs originally because they thought it would be disrespectful, and they also thought if something didn't have 50 years of history behind it, it wasn't the real thing. And you imagine that was the hippest, newest thing going, and they've got this complete concern with tradition. And they say, well, we shouldn't really write songs, it would be disrespectful if this hasn't got a history behind it. It's not the real thing. So what they wanted was they were keyed into the energy of a tradition, not trying to do something wacky and new. It's only when you hit the drug thing and the psychedelic period where people are trying to add things in and be wacky. And of course you get some things that are okay out of that, but also it's the death really of R&B and rock and roll. It's the beginning of a descent into indulgence. You know, it's like Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I mean, it's an album that sounds like a it's old women's music. They've done something which might be an amazing production and maybe a very interesting thing to try to do, but it's for school children in a way, or for old ladies, and the tradition does not make it irrelevant, it makes it relevant. This is what all art should do. All art used to be plugged into a tradition.
Yeah, to get
and people think that the tradition is the thing that makes it boring and dead, and that's why they abandon it. But the tradition is, all it does is it solves lots of the problems that you don't ever need to solve, because it's already solved for you. You know, you don't have to reinvent a wheel. You just use the wheel. It works, and it's so you use it, and you use it to go where you want to go. I've always tried to stop playing music, but it seems to come back up, and if something comes back up, then you just go with it. So, I mean, I just stopped 6 years ago and didn't tell anyone. We didn't make any announcement, but as far as I was concerned, I just wasn't going to do it. And then it's just come back that we are a bit, which is handy, because it means I don't have to come out of retirement, because I never retire.